How's it going, guys? Shizukatz here on the Tressa's Collectibles channel, and today I'm going to be bringing you guys a deck building session out of cards from the newly released English original set RWBY. So between myself and Mike, we have each selected one deck that we are going to be building for you guys. So for Mike's deck, he's going to be building an 8 standby build. You guys can go check out the video for that by clicking the link down in the description. And as for me, I'm going to be building an 8 gate deck using the 2 Cinder combos. So it's going to be an 8 gate deck using the Cinder level 1 and Cinder level 3. And the main reason that I chose this deck is because Cinder combo honestly was seeing a lot of hate for its Climax combo, especially since it was revealed right after the Penny level 1, which basically does the same combo but better. But I basically wanted to challenge myself to see what I could come up with this combo that I think a lot of people are just basically treating as if it's just garbage. So we're going to go ahead and get right into the deck building. So first things first, first step for building our deck, we want to take a look at our Climax combos that we're going to be using. So first things first, let's take a look at the Cinder. So she is a 1/0 3K. During your turn, she gets plus 2,000 power, which brings her up to 5K. Not the biggest number. It only gets up to 6K with the Gate Climax. When she's placed on stage from hand, if you have 2 or less cards in memory, you can send an Amber Fall Maiden, which is a salvage Ricky, from your waiting room to memory. And the Climax combo with a gate on attack, if you have Grim Invasion in your Climax area, you mill 1, and then you salvage a character whose level is equal or lower than the level of the milled card. And Climaxes count as level 0. So if we compare this to the Penny combo, which is basically the same as like Yotsuba from Quintessential Quintuplets. So that combo gets to mill 2 cards and then add the levels up, and then you get to salvage something whose level is that number or lower, whereas this one only gets to mill 1. So it's easy to see why a lot of people are just directly comparing the two and saying that Penny's better. Personally, from my observations at least, the main weakness of the Penny combo is that green is honestly not the greatest color in this set. There's not a lot of incentive for me to run a lot of green, and especially with Penny being a level 1 combo, you want to be able to secure green as early as possible. But if the overall card quality of that color is just not good, then that kind of turns me off of running that particular color. Whereas red, in my opinion, is the strongest color in the set, and it just has so many really, really good cards. And that is the reason why I wanted to try building with this. As far as this Cinder versus the RWBY from the trial deck, which is also a gate combo, I wanted to just try to come up with a build that was just very easy to use, did not have too much interactivity with the opponent. So you have just the Cinder combo that can just, on attack, you just mill 1 and you salvage. So you just, very, very simple to use combo, and you don't have to mess around with like your opponent's field when trying to use this. So we're going to be putting in 4 copies of the Cinder level 1, and then for the Cinder level 3, she is a healer, and she has 8K base power. If you have an Amber Fall Maiden in memory, she goes up to 11K. Very, very solid power line. And her Climax combo is with the other gate. When she reverses the battle opponent, you can burn 1 and then put the opponent's character on top of your opponent's deck. So this card is free finishing power, although it does have to reverse. We do have some ways to circumvent this reverse requirement, which we'll get to later. Whether it's because your opponent's like crashing their board or they're just really big, we're going to be including ways that can address both of those weaknesses of this combo. Now the strength of this combo is that it's free, so it's very, very cheap to use. Basically, all you need to pay is the cost to put this onto the board, and then you're good to go. And then you just need to get your Climax. So we'll max out on each of our Climaxes, of course, and then we're going to go ahead and grab the Climaxes themselves. So 4 copies of, or we're going to use the non-foils just so people can recognize it more easily. So 4 copies of Fall Maiden's Downfall and 4 copies of Grim Invasion. So next, the next step that I want to take is taking a look at what other colors we can implement with some high impact profiles. So far with our 2 Climax combos, we only have red, and we have a lot of freedom to go into other colors. And so the first card that comes to mind for me that I want to include from another color is the early play Blake. So this can be played at level 2 while you have 2 or less climaxes in waiting room. On play, heal to stock, and she gains 1k power for each of your other back row remnant characters. So she reaches a maximum power of 11k. Really good power for an early play healer. And this is what we're going to want to be slapping down onto the board at level 2. So we can afford to be playing a lot of copies of these at 2 because, like I said before, our Climax combo finisher is basically just the Cinder herself. You don't have to pay any sort of discard cost or extra stock cost. So we can just afford to just dump a bunch of Blakes onto the board at level 2 and then stabilize our mid game. I'm going to start by putting 3 copies in for now. We could potentially see a 4th copy in the deck depending on how our space looks down the line, but I think we're definitely going to be running at least 3 copies. Okay, so with that, we have now established our first 2 main colors. We're going to have red main, blue secondary. We do have some potential to go into green or yellow down the line as well, but we'll take a look at that when we get there. So next thing I want to do is take a look at some of the potential payoffs for running 8 Gate. So there are a few cards that go off of running a lot of Gate Climaxes. The first one being the Emerald Brainstorm. So this is a Brainstorm 5. If you hit either Fall Maiden's Downfall or Grim Invasion, for each copy you get to search your deck for up to 1 Remnant character. And then it's a tap 2 Brainstorm compared to the Nora, which is a tap self mill 4 salvage. And then Emerald's other effect is your center slot character gets 500 power. So not too huge on the 500 power. It's honestly not the most significant thing. The main thing that I want to look at here is the Brainstorm 5 being a Rest 2 Brainstorm 5 versus a Brainstorm Salvage Rest Self. And the main thing that I think about when I'm comparing a Salvage Brainstorm to a Search Brainstorm is that when you are using a Salvage Brainstorm, you can always play around how many cards are going to be left in your deck after the Brainstorm's finished resolving. So let's say you want to have your deck at a certain state where like you can mill it down and then end at 1 card in deck. It's very easy to plan for that when you're using a Salvage Brainstorm, but it's much harder to plan your deck size ahead of time when you're using a Search Brainstorm, because depending on how many climaxes you hit, your deck size is going to change, and you could just end up in some pretty weird situations regarding your deck size and like when you're going to be refreshing. So even though this Emerald is a card that is meant to be used in the 8-gate double Cinder combo deck, I think we're actually going to end up using the Nora Brainstorm instead. So here we have the Nora. She's just a very simple tap self salvage Brainstorm, and also when my character reverses the opponent's character in battle, I can choose one of my characters and give it 500 power until end of turn. So this could help out with the Cinder combos low power. As long as we can get our first reverse, we potentially make future copies of the Cinder stronger, so we can potentially get more reverses. I'm going to start with 3 copies of this. We might go to 4, but since the Cinder combo is able to secure copies of the Nora very easily, because Nora is a level 0, and then Cinder combo will always be able to salvage a level 0. I think we can safely start with 3 copies, and then if we have room later, we can go to 4. Some other 8-gate synergy cards that I wanted to look at were the Mercury level 0. So this one right here for the original art, the non-foil art. So he is a global 500 to all of your remnant characters, and when your character's trigger check reveals a gate climax, you can give any of your characters 2,000 power until end of turn. So this could definitely help out our power lines at level 1, as they are a little bit weak. We do get just the initial 500 global boost, bringing our offensive power up to 6,500, which is respectable. And additionally, we do get talking's hard. We do have the potential for the extra 2,000 bonus power when we trigger a gate. And there is actually something, another card that I wanted to take a look at that I think synergizes quite well with the Mercury. And so we're going to keep this in the back of our mind for now. The last card that has synergy with the 8-gate strategy is another Emerald card, this level 2. So during your turn, she gets plus 1,500 power for each of your other Remnant characters. With 6,500 base power and a full board, this brings her up to 12,500. And then when you play a Gate Climax, you can look at the top card of your deck and either put it on top or put it in the waiting room. And then this card gains an effect until the end of the turn, where on reverse, you get to choose a Remnant character in your waiting room and put it into stock. So this essentially makes her a 2-0. And when you play the Gate Climax, she will be going up to 13,500. 14 if you have like an assist or something like that, like maybe the Mercury. And yeah, so you can get that stock refund. And yeah, you have a 2-0. You got some really high burst power. But the thing is that two problems, in my opinion. The first one is that I feel like at level 2, I want to be prioritizing the Blake early play instead. And secondly, this card is green. And if we're not running the Emerald Brainstorm, honestly, like there's not a whole lot of other green stuff that I would really want to put into the deck. So I think we're just going to pass up on this Emerald as well. One more card that I did want to look at before we get further into the deck building. In order to capitalize on our Blake early plays at level 2, as these cards are really big, but I just want to be able to really dominate the board at level 2. One more card that I want to look at before we get into like the zeros and stuff is the Cinder 2k assist. So she gives 2k power to level 3 or higher characters in front of her. With the Blake at full power, this is going to bring her up to 13k power. Very, very good number. And on play, if I have 2 or less cards in memory, I can send an Amberfall Maiden from my waiting room to memory. And at the beginning of my Climax phase, if Amber Fall Maiden is in memory, I can choose one of my characters, give it 1,500 power until end of turn. So this is the card that is going to accomplish 2 things for us. At level 2, it's going to make our board very, very high power with our Blake early plays. As I said, 13k power. And additionally, this is also what we're going to use for our Cinder level 3 combo. If our opponent is able to get really high power that's even high enough to like beat our Blakes, or if we just had like a really poor level 2 game and we weren't, able to develop Blakes onto the board, and our opponent gets control at level 2, and then we can use this Cinder to get reverses with our Cinder combo. So I'm definitely running at least one. I'm potentially thinking about running a second copy, but this is definitely a good card to look out for your level 2 game, especially with the Blake early plays. So now let's go into the zero line. Now that we've established our like main package, and we have pretty much our main setup, and we want to start looking at filling in the rest of the slots. So the first thing that I think I want to look at is plussing slots at 0. So typically I want to have around like 6, 7, 8 plussing slots at 0. Because Amberfall Maiden is part of our game plan, we're going to just go ahead and grab a few copies of her. I'm thinking 3 to start, since we do have ways to just put her into memory with either our level 1 combo and our level 2 assist, and we don't actually need her in memory until level 3 for our Cinder to gain 3k power. So I think 3 copies might be fine. As far as her effect goes, she is a Salvage Ricky. When she's placed on stage from hand, you can pay 1, clock 1, choose a Remnant character in your waiting room, return to hand, and then during your turn, she gets plus 1k power. So pretty decent turn 2 play. 3k offensive power will allow her to kill most things at level 0, and then you can use her effect to get that plus 1. Other plussing zeros that I had in mind were the Yang level 0 clean cut, which is this one right here, this double R. So she's a 1500 power base power clean cut, and then when she's placed on stage from hand, you reveal the top card of your deck. If it's a Remnant character, choose one of your characters and give it 2k power until end of turn. So when you're playing this with the intent to buff herself, she goes up to 3500 power clean cut, pretty reasonable power line, just don't miss. And then she does have really, really nice scaling into the mid to late game, as she's still able to utilize her 2k buff on other characters in comparison to other clean cuts like Kirito from Sword Art Online, where he's only able to give power to himself in the mid to late game, so falls off a little bit there. So I think I'm going to be running 4 copies of this Yang, and while talking about this one, I do want to give a quick mention to an interaction that actually I was discussing with a friend of mine, Cody, when we were taking a look at some of the RWBY cards. We were talking about the combination of the Yang clean cut with the Mercury assist, and it made me realize that putting these 2 cards in the deck synergize very well. The reason being, Mercury being a global assist, you can put him in the front row and then he'll still give power to your Yang clean cut, and then he becomes the perfect target for the Yang clean cut to move to back row. Now the thing is that if the Yang misses her top check, assuming it's not an event, so let's say she reveals a Climax on top of the deck, so she will not get the 2k power from her own effect, but you can use Mercury's effect upon triggering a Gate Climax to give the 2k power to your Yang, and then she goes up to 4k power anyways. So really, really nice interaction there, and it made me want to try out this duo of cards for the level 0 game. So this does mean that as far as our turn 1 plays, we don't have anything really, really good to go on turn 1, as our plays are pretty much all either turn 1 going second or turn 2. So turn 1 going second or turn 2 would be the Yang, as this card basically doesn't do anything going first. And the Amber, since you do need 1 stock to pay her ability, doesn't do anything going first either. So if we go first with this deck, we're basically looking to just play some random 0 garbage, let it get run over, and then on turn 2 we can slap down Yang, Amber, Brainstorm, or Yang, Amber, Mercury, and then we just go in and we get our own +2, and we get to play really aggressively into the 1 game. So with that, our 0 line sits at 13 cards currently. Typically I'm looking at around 18 as a safe starting number, and so with our plussing slots and our back row slots out of the way, the next thing I want to look at is utility. So we have a lot of really, really nice utility options in RWBY, so let's go ahead and take a look at some of those. Let's sort by level 0. So some of the ones that I wanted to take a look at, first we have the Yang Drop Search. She gets 1k power if you have 2 or more other remnant characters, so 3k Drop Search, really, really nice. It's just solid if you need to play it in the early game just to kill something and also search towards anything that you might need. So this is definitely one of the top considerations for the utility slots. We also have access to the Zwei level 0, which is a drop salvage. This card, when it's placed on stage from hand, you mill 2, and then if you mill a Climax, you can discard 1 to search your deck for a remnant character, and he's also a standard drop salvage character. So the main reason that I would consider the Zwei is for the free mill 2 on play. Being able to have one of your utility pieces that you can just pick up, and then if you just need a little bit of extra mill, you can just slap it onto the board, is really, really valuable. So I think that's a pretty good reason to probably include 1 copy of Zwei, especially since we are running Salvage Brainstorm. If we do have Zwei in the waiting room, we can just pick them up off the Salvage Brainstorm, just plop them down, mill 2 cards, get out of any nasty deck situations. So those are our main 2, just a standard drop search and a standard drop salvage. But we do have some other really good utility as well. One in particular is the James level 0. I think this card is absolutely insane. They printed a card with pretty much this exact same set of effects in Quintessential Quintuplets Volume 2, which is not currently out in English, but yeah, for those of you who know the JP cards, there's a Nino card with the exact same effects as this James, except it only hits Ninos. And so I looked at that card and I was like, this card is insane. This card is super good utility. And the fact that they printed it in RWBY, but it hits the entire set because he can salvage remnant characters, I think is just super, super good. And it's definitely another top tier utility consideration. He's able to filter cards out of your hand for free, 2 cards even, because he has 2 abilities that discard cards and then filter for something else. So if you just want to change your hand a lot on the fly, James is definitely a really, really good card to look into. And then a couple other cards to look at. We do have the RWBY Climax Swapper, which is... Which one is it? This one, right? Yeah, so we have the RWBY Climax Swapper, and she also has on play top or mill. Very, very simple card. And then we also have the Weiss Climax Salvage. And she also gains she gains 1k power up to twice per turn when you play another remnant character. So those are the ones, those are like the main ones that I think we could look at. We also have access to like a Cinder level 0 that's on play pay 1, discard a remnant character to look it up to top 4, choose one, add it to hand. This is also consideration as well. I'm going to be prioritizing 1 copy of the Yang level 0, 1 copy of the Zwei for the free mill, and 1 copy of the RWBY Climax Swapper. Those are the ones I'm going to prioritize. We could mess around with other utility options later, but I think these are the... Just for simplicity's sake, we're going to start with these 3. And then also, one other card that I did not mention before is the Pyrrha level 0. So, one thing about this deck is that the Cinder combo, it doesn't mill a whole lot because it only goes through 2 cards per attack, 1 for the combo, 1 for the attack itself. So I do think that we could potentially look into running copies of Pyrrha in order to get the mill going. We can also send a couple copies to memory, get some free compression. Do note that we only need 1 copy of Amber in memory for our level 3. So we could just have our memory be like 2 copies of Pyrrha, 1 copy of Amber, and then we're all set to go. So I think we could experiment with the Pyrrha. I think I'm going to try, not 4, maybe 3 copies. And then that puts us at 18 level 0s, and then we can come back later once we've taken a look at some of the other levels, maybe mess around with the ratios, but I think this is a pretty good place to start as far as our 0 line. So currently we're looking at 39 cards. We have 11 slots left to go. The next thing that I want to take a look at is more level 3s, ones that specifically help out our endgame. So there are often one of level 3s that you play for like techs, and in this set there are some very, very powerful ones, and the main one that I want to look at for this deck is the level 3 Neo. This card is insane, and it falls into our colors because we're already running blue. So this card on play, we can pay 1 stock to salvage any Climax from our waiting room. If we need the Climax for our Cinder combo, we just put Neo onto the board, pay 1 extra stock, grab our Climax, and then we're good to go. This essentially means that like with a hand of like 2 Cinder, 1 Neo, and then we don't have our Climax, we just need 7 stock to be able to put both Cinders on the board, play Neo, get our Climax, and then we go to town. Which is like, that's super affordable. 7 stock's definitely super affordable. But Neo's other ability is what makes her an absolutely insane card in RWBY. And if you're playing blue, you're definitely going to want to put her in your deck. So when you play this card, you can discard a remnant character to choose up to 2 characters from your opponent's waiting room and put them onto your opponent's stage in open slot positions. So this accomplishes multiple things. First of all, if your opponent crashes their board at level 2, which if they can't get over your Blake early plays, they're probably going to be just like crashing a bunch. If they crash their board, you don't have any reverse targets for your Cinder combos until you play Neo, and then you literally just put reverse targets on your opponent's board, and then you just laugh at your opponent because then you just get to reverse their cards for free. So this is definitely a card that you want to be running with Cinder, and even with other combos in the set. So like level 3 RWBY, you do want to have cards on your opponent's board in order for RWBY to clock shot. And then even if your opponent isn't playing the even if you're not playing a reverse combo, so like let's say you're playing, for example, Blake level 3. If we look at Blake, she has a Mocha Climax combo, so you get to look at up to 2 cards from top of your opponent's deck, send up to 2 to waiting room, put the rest on top, and then do the same to yourself. So having Neo allows you to put cards of specific levels on your opponent's side of the board so that you can create specific damage side attacks. So even for Climax combos that don't require reversing, you can still set up these like side attack modulating damage situations, and then you can just get precise damage to kill your opponent. And so I think, yeah, definitely Neo is a really, really good card that you're going to want to be looking into for Ruby. The fact that she's on color with the Blake early play is like really, really good as well. So as long as you're accommodating blue for Blake, you have room for Neo in your deck. Another level 3 that we can look at is the level 3 James. So this is an on-play bounce, and you also get to look at up to 3 cards from top of your deck and rearrange them. And on attack, he can give one of your characters 500 power for each of your remnant characters until end of turn. So he can potentially give a 2500 power buff. So bounce is a pretty good ability against certain matchups. So like if you're against a matchup where they have like a rest counter or a money counter or something like that, if they have like a minus soul effect on like a level 3, you can just get rid of those annoying abilities, send them back to the hand, and just go about your day. So I think that the James is a pretty worthwhile inclusion in our deck. So we'll go ahead and slot 1. Again, just like the Neapolitan, he is blue, and we are already accommodating for blue with other cards like our Mercury level 0 and the Blake early plays. So with that, we have a pretty solid level 3 line. And as I was saying earlier, we do have consideration to play a second copy, or not a second, sorry, play a 4th copy of our Blake early play, but we'll come back to that in a bit. So next, so we've pretty much figured out our level 3s, and we figured out for the most part our level 0s, and we have 9 slots left to go. Let's take a look at some level 2 and level 1 cards that we might want to run. So considering that this is an 8-gate deck, one card that comes to mind for me that I want to run is the Crow Free Fresh Backup. Now, if you guys have watched any of our recent like data bullet stuff, or if you guys have seen our 7 Deadly Sins deck profile, you guys know that in a deck running lots of gates and lots of choice climaxes, free fresh backups are super high value, because if you trigger a bunch of gates, you just grab a free fresh backup from your waiting room, and then you can just use it as a get out of jail free card essentially. And Crow is definitely a card that you're going to want to include, as our deck is an 8-gate deck. So you can get out of those sticky situations and just get into a more favorable deck state. As far as other counters, we do also have, as some other options, we have the memory kit counter. And this is just like a standard memory kit counter. You can use it to deny like end of attack abilities, or just get characters off the opponent's board that you just don't want them encoring, something that's like high value. And then we also have as another option, I believe it was a Ren anti-change backup, this one right here. You have the option to run this as well. I'm going to be prioritizing the 2 copies of the Crow, and we will go from there. Now, as far as other level 1 slots, there are 2 cards that I had in mind to run alongside our Cinder combo at level 1, and those were the Atom 1-0. I think this card is super, super strong. They printed a card with this effect in Darling in the Franxx, and that card was super strong there. It's super strong here. When this card attacks, you can sack one of your other remnant characters, and then you reveal the top card of your deck. If it's a remnant character, you add it to hand. So the really nice thing about this Atom, about this profile in general, is that it's not really going 1-for-1. Like you are sacking a character in order to get a card, but if you play with the mentality that like the card that you are sacking was going to go to waiting room by the time your next turn comes around anyway, it's basically a +1, right? So if we look at all the other cards that we're running, like at level 1, our Cinder combo at level 1, that thing's like 3k on the fence. That thing's getting run over by literally anything. So if we attack with it, get the Climax combo, get the value, and then we have Atom sacrifice her off, and then we can potentially get an extra card in hand, that's super good. We're just getting extra value. And then also Atom, with his effect, if we reveal the top card and it's a character we added to our hand, we're also digging towards potential additional gate climaxes to fill our hand even more. So we do have a lot of potential for a lot of value in this deck between our 8 gate climaxes, our free level 1 combo, and the Atom. So Atom, definitely a card that we're going to be including in our deck. I'm going to put him at 2 copies. And the other card that I wanted to look at was the Raven Shimakai. So she is a 1045. When we play a Climax, she gets 1500 power, bringing her up to 7k, considering that we're running all 1k ones. And then she also has the Shimakai effect, which allows her to buff one of your other characters 500 times the number of your other Remnant characters until end of turn. So this can help out with our fairly low power at level 1. But this can also be very, very useful in the mid to late game if our opponent is also playing like early plays of their own and we have to like contest each other's early play board. Raven's 2k buff on attack, assuming you have a full board, could potentially be the difference between your opponent holding control of the board at level 2 versus you holding control of the board at level 2. And I was thinking about how many copies of this I wanted to run in the deck. I'm thinking either 1 or 2. As far as right now, I think because of how much access we have to this through like our gates, our salvage brainstorm, I think we could safely go in with just 1 copy. But through more testing, we may run a second copy down the line. So this now leaves us at 46 cards. I need to think about any other particular profiles that I'm missing. I think one that I do want to take a look at is anti-change bombs, of which I believe there are 2 of. So I believe there's a green one who was like one of the side characters, and then there's the one that I'm more inclined to run, which is the level 1 Neptune, since we are already in blue. So he's able to bottom deck one of your opponent's over-leveled characters, as well as on play, he can choose one of your characters, give it 1500 power until end of turn. This again would helps out with our potentially small power at level 1 and fulfills a similar role to the Raven, where if we need to contest our opponent's like early play board at level 2 with our own early plays, the Neptune not only allows us to guarantee removal on one of our opponent's early plays, but also buffs one of our own to potentially contest like a second early play if our opponent was playing multiple early plays at level 2. So we're going to be including 1 copy of the Neptune. And then now we take a look at the list as a whole. We have pretty much all of our bases covered, I think. And we do have 3 slots left. I think what I want to invest the additional slots into are more level 0s. Maybe like 2 more level 0s. We're at like 18 right now. We can go up to 20, which is a nice round number. Let me just double check the count. We have 1, 5, 8, 11, 14. So we're at 19 right now. Is that right? 1, 5, 8, 11, 14. Yeah, we're at 19 right now. Yeah, I'm not too worried about going with like a whole bunch of level 0s. It does change the balance of the Cinder combo a bit though, because if we do mill a level 0, we can only salvage level 0s. So maybe we don't want to include more lower level cards and we want to go higher level a bit. With that in mind, I think what we're actually just going to end up doing is maxing out our copies of the Blake early play. And then we will probably go with the second copy of the Raven 1-0 and the second copy of the Cinder back row. And I think that pretty much covers everything that we wanted to look at for this deck. So we can just run through our game plan real quick. At level 0, basically we're just looking to gain a lot of advantage using level 0 profiles like our Amber Fall Maiden, our level 0 Yang, while simultaneously we want to get a bit of mill started with our Pyrrha if possible, because our level 1 combo doesn't mill a whole lot. So we want to be able to get through our first deck in a fairly reasonable amount of time, not stalling too much on our first deck. Additionally, the copies of Pyrrha allows us to get some additional memory. We want to secure 1 Amber in our memory by level 3, and then the other memory can either be more Ambers or Pyrrha level 0s. Basically, we can just jam 3 free memory, and as long as one of them is Amber, we're good to go. At level 1, we're going to be using our Cinder combo and Atom level 1. as well as triggering gates to keep our hand size high, and then hopefully reaching the end of our first deck by before we hit level 2. And then at level 2, in our second deck rotation, we're looking to play Blake early plays onto the board, preferably 2 with a copy of the Cinder support behind them, making them a very strong 13k power, potentially 13.5 if we do have the Mercury on the board as well. And then moving into level 3, we do have our Cinders, which are healers, and then we can use our Climax combo in combination with either Neo level 3 in order to put bodies onto our opponent's board to reverse, or if our opponent was actually able to get over our Blakes, or we had a poor level 2 game, we just put Cinder behind her, we just make her really, really big, and then we just go for reverses the normal way, and then we just finish our opponent that way. Another thing to note is that because Cinder level 3 has a very high base power, 11k, we can just play, we can honestly just play level 3 game where we just slap her onto the board, and then we can just sit on her for an extra turn, not go for a combo. Her high power with the support at 13k will allow us to fairly easily retain her on the board going into a second level 3 turn, at which point we can put Neapolitan onto the board, give our opponent reverse targets, and then we go for the kill. Alright, so I made an oopsie, and then this whole time I forgot to talk about Salem, which is definitely a card that you're going to want to be including in, like, actually every RWBY deck ever. So let's go ahead and take a look at the card real quick. This card gets 1,000 power for each character in your opponent's back row, bringing her up to 11k, but the main reason that you play the card is for her second ability. When she's placed on stage from hand, you can pay 1 to choose one of 2 effects and resolve it. The first one is a stock swap, which is send all of your opponent's stock to waiting room, and they replace their stock with an equal number of cards from the top of their deck. This is an extremely, extremely important ability. Like, sets that do have stock swap versus sets that don't have stock swap is actually just like, it's actually just a distinction that people make in Weiss Schwarz, and so having a stock swap in your deck just makes a huge difference. But the fact that Salem also has the flexibility to use her second effect is actually, the second choice of her second effect is actually ridiculous. You can mill the bottom 5 cards of your opponent's deck and then burn them X, where X equals to the number of climaxes. So if your opponent's deck is not in a state where it's favorable to stock swap them, so like let's say they just refreshed, typically when you stock swap, you want to do it in a way that you can guarantee a certain amount of climaxes going into their stock. So for example, like if your opponent has like 8 stock and they have like 8 deck left, then that's like a perfect opportunity to stock swap. If you can make it so that a bunch of climaxes are going from those 8 cards in deck into their stock. But if they just refresh, then you have no guarantee on what you're going to be able to stock swap. So you just have the option to go for the second effect, and it just contributes damage towards your end game, and that's really, really strong. And you definitely want to be including Salem in like every RWBY deck. The fact that she's in red as well basically means that you can very easily put her in just about any deck. It's super, super easy to color fix for red, just because it's like it has some of the best cards in the set, like Nora Brainstorm, Pyrrha level 0, things like that. You have lots of ways to color fix for red. So Salem, definitely an auto include. I'm a big dum-dum for forgetting about this card in the first run through. And as far as what we are taking out to include 1 copy of the Salem, I dropped the Blake early play back down to 3 copies, and we're going to be including 1 copy of the Salem. So there we go. We have the deck. Let's cut back into the outro. So yeah, I think I'm pretty happy with this deck. We're going to be doing some testing with this later on in some future videos, so stay tuned for those. If you guys have any questions or comments, feel free to leave those down in the comment section below. And of course, definitely go check out Mike's deck profile or deck building session on his 8 standby deck, which we will have linked down in the description box below. So until next time, this has been Shizukatz, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.